I do not think I have ever seen so much energy in one room. This is fantastic. All of you organizers, thank you for the work that you have done. What an extraordinary result you have achieved here. Jill Docking, thank you for a wonderful introduction. All of you in this room know that Jill's passion for Kansas is truly unmatched, and I could not be more fortunate to have a great running mate, and she is going to be terrifically talented. Thank you. I'm so pleased to be here today with so many amazing Kansas women. I'm inspired by your energy and deeply humbled to have your support. You know, Kansas has a long line of proud, hardworking women who have changed history. In 1887, Susanna Medora Salter of Argonia, Kansas, became the first woman to be elected mayor in our entire country. In 1928, Amelia Earhart from Atchison, Kansas, became the first female aviator to fly solo across the Atlantic Ocean. In 1930, Hattie McDaniel from right here in Wichita, Kansas, became the first black woman to win an Academy Award for her role in Gone with the Wind. In 1949, Georgia Niece Gray from Richland, Kansas, was nominated by President Truman to be the first woman treasurer of the United States. And in 1978, Nancy Casabon Baker, who grew up in Topeka, Kansas, became the first woman elected to the United States Senate who did not succeed her husband in Congress and was not appointed to fill an unexpired term. Wasn't it great to hear from her? That is a pretty darn impressive legacy, isn't it? Well, your presence here tonight, your presence in this campaign is carrying this great tradition forward. Because make no mistake, the future of Kansas will be in your hands in November. A little over a year ago, after watching the Brownback experiment for 3.5 years, I couldn't stand by and watch the governor continue to hurt our schools, damage our economy, and put our state's future in jeopardy. I didn't take the decision to run for governor lightly, but I've always been someone who believes that problems are there to be solved, that cooperation is the key to getting things done, and that things can always be better than they are today. So let's talk about today. Let me tell you about how I am feeling about today. I am deeply, deeply concerned about the future of our state. My wife Stephanie and I are worried about our daughter's future the same way that many of you are worried about how things are headed for your children and grandchildren. We're concerned about our stalled economy and the damage Sam Brownback and his policies are doing to our communities. But in order for us to get things back on track, we need to understand how we got so far off course. So let's start there. I became the Kansas House Minority Leader in 2009 at the height of the Great Recession. It was a global economic crisis that was tearing a hole through the middle class, leaving all of us wondering what was next. The Great Recession didn't happen because of any decision that we made here in Kansas. But to dig our way out, we knew that we had to work together to protect the things that are important to all of us. So together, with moderate Republicans, I led a bipartisan coalition to pass a Kansas budget in the toughest of economic times. Spending was reduced by over $1 billion. We passed one of the largest job programs in Kansas history, and we protected our public schools from cuts that would have devastated communities all across this state. The recession wasn't quite over when Sam Brownback took office, but the worst of it was behind us. And thanks to the good work of our bipartisan coalition, Sam Brownback was poised for a term of growth and recovery. You know, at first, the governor's priorities didn't sound so bad. Within a week of taking his oath of office, he came to the legislature to deliver his very first State of the State address. And in that address, he declared that public education is to Kansas what the national defense is to the federal government. And I couldn't agree with him more. Education is that important to our state. But the very next day, Governor Brownback released his first state budget, and it provided for the single largest cut to public school funding in state history. And just 4 months later, Sam Brownback got his wish, and he signed those cuts into law. And when he signed them into law, he made another statement, and this one has really stuck with me. He said it was a victory for Kansas. Think about that for just a second. Historic cuts to public education, a victory for Kansas. Well, only if somehow winning means that our schools are weakened, our class sizes are larger, parents are now being asked to pay fee after fee after fee to send their child to public school, and businesses are struggling to find educated workers to fill positions. This is not winning to most Kansans. Everywhere I have traveled, I have met Kansans troubled by the governor's cuts to our schools. That's because they know what you and I know. They know that we have a moral obligation to provide our children with the very best public education possible. You see, Kansans know that strong public schools are the very foundation of a stronger economy. But Sam Brownback simply doesn't understand that you can't have one without the other. This was never more evident when he unveiled his one-size-fits-all economic plan. He called it a real-life experiment, the Red State model. But the governor's own Council of Economic Advisors recently documented that Kansas is trailing our surrounding states in virtually every economic growth indicator there is. And on top of that, college tuition has increased at every state university as a direct result of Governor Brownback's cuts to higher education. Kansas is losing more small businesses than we're creating. Our state's credit rating has been downgraded 3 times in a little over a year. We are ranked 45th in the nation in new business creation. And we are facing as a state a $1.3 billion budget deficit over the next 5 years. My friends, the results of the Brownback experiment are in, and it has been a total failure. But when Governor Brownback was recently asked what his main priority would be if he gets a second term, without hesitation, he said, hit the accelerator on what we're doing. How will we ever restore funding to our classrooms if we hit the accelerator on deep cuts to education? How will we ever get our economy performing above the national average if we hit the accelerator on credit downgradings and businesses closing shop? Folks, when you lose control of the car, you don't put your foot on the gas. That is common sense. There is no doubt that Kansas needs to go in a new direction, and we need to start heading there right now. We can't undo this mess overnight, but we can restore common sense leadership. And to do that, we've got to get back to the fundamentals, back to our priorities. My top priority has always been our public schools. One of the first things that I did when I came to the legislature in 2003 was to work with a bipartisan group that developed a proposal to put more resources into our classrooms. I helped put together the bipartisan coalition that made a historic investment in our schools in 2005. In 2012, I was the first person to offer a plan to restore funding cuts made during the recession and Sam Brownback's single largest cut to public schools. And last spring, I was again the very first person to offer a plan to comply with a court order to make school funding more equitable. Public schools have always been my priority right from the beginning. But in addition to restoring our commitment to our classrooms, we also need to get back to the basics to grow our economy. We need to focus on working together to find Kansas solutions. I'm a 15-year member of my local Chamber of Commerce. I have been a strong advocate for private sector job creation, and I have supported millions in responsible, targeted tax relief to benefit both businesses and families, including tens of millions of dollars in property tax relief. But unlike the governor, I don't want to force every Kansas community to embrace the same experiment or that red state model. I understand that the needs of Johnson County are very different than the needs of Johnson City. And I'm going to listen to you so that together we can find Kansas solutions that work for you in your community. And the only way that we are going to be able to find those Kansas solutions is by bringing Kansans together. That is why I am so proud that over 100 current and former Kansas Republican elected officials have endorsed our campaign, from school board members to legislators and Republican Party leaders. The bipartisan coalition built by this campaign is truly unprecedented, and it is exactly what Kansas needs. But I must tell you that my commitment to bipartisanship spans far beyond a political campaign. I was raised to be a good neighbor. I learned to serve others first. And I've always felt that leadership is about empowering others and finding solutions, not winning the argument. Politics simply should never come before people. Throughout my 12 years in the legislature, I have been the kind of leader who is willing to sit down and listen and work with anyone, no matter what their party affiliation is. Because when it comes to our children and our schools, when it comes to creating jobs and rebuilding the middle class, party labels simply should not matter. Unfortunately, Sam Brownback's entire campaign is based on partisan labels and Washington, D.C. style attacks. He plans to spend every day between now and November 4th doing exactly that. But I want you to remember, there is only one person in this race that spent 16 years in Washington, D.C., and it is not me. Only one person in this race has an open presidential campaign committee, and it's not me. And only one person in this race turned our state into a science lab, hoping to take his experiment to the national level, and believe me, it is not me. In recent weeks, our campaign has stormed onto the national stage, and people across the country are watching us closely. Since then, I've been asked repeatedly, what are the national implications of this race? What does it mean for the grand red state model, for the far-right movement, or even the 2016 presidential race if we defeat Sam Brownback 65 days from now? My answer? I don't know, and I don't care, because the only thing I care about are the implications of this race for the people of Kansas. That is because my loyalties, my focus, and my priorities as governor will always be right here in Kansas. We have such a rich heritage. I've always been especially proud that here in Kansas, we gave women the right to vote nearly a decade before it became the law of the United States. Yes, we should applaud that. It's because of women like you, standing up for what's right, making your voice heard, that we were able to achieve that important victory 102 years ago. And it is because of you that we will be able to achieve another important victory on November 4th. There is no doubt in my mind that we cannot win this election without you. Jill and I need your help. We need your voices, because the hardest phase of this campaign is now upon us. We need you to hang with us here for those next 65 days. We have to keep engaging our neighbors, our co-workers, our family members in a discussion about how we are going to put Kansas back on the right track again. Everyone in this room must be a messenger. Every person here tonight must devote more of themselves to this effort than you ever have before if we are going to be successful. And don't ever forget, there is so much to fight for. Our state, our home, our children. I take a lot of pride in being a Kansan. I was raised here. I'm the son of 2 teachers. I'm a husband and a father. My wife and I are raising our 4-year-old daughter here. I can't promise that we'll always agree on everything, but when I'm governor, it will be my goal to listen more than I talk, to negotiate, not dictate, and to build consensus rather than sow contention. I will always remember that the seeds of prosperity are planted at the schoolhouse door, and I will always seek bipartisan cooperation to meet our challenges. This is my vision for Kansas. It's who I am, and it's what I stand for. And with your help and the help of many other Kansans, this is the kind of leadership that we can restore to the governor's office in November. So in the words of another great Kansas woman, Mary Elizabeth Lease, let's spend the next 65 days raising a little less corn and raising a little more hell.